Our next guest is ready. Nick is working hard. He's a friend of the show. He's always generous with his time. Coached to many stars of the past, and of course, current coach, longtime coach to Tommy Paul. Let's bring Brad Stine into the picture once again. Brad's with Nick. There he is. Brad, good to see you again. You got myself, Tracy, Nick, and of course, Nick. How's your Miami so far? The trip?
It's been pretty basic so far. Just practicing, getting ready. You know, Tommy plays on Friday. I am helping out with Ethan Quinn also, so I've been going to his practices and his matches. He got through the qualifying and then lost today. So yeah, it's been a little bit busy, but you know, nice so far. The weather's been phenomenal, except for the first day I was here. It was super windy, but the last 2 days have been really nice. And we have Nick. We have Nick here. Of course. That's all that matters is you have Nick here.
We got my man here. Well, thanks, Brad, for joining us. And for the fans that don't know, I mean, I played doubles with Tommy. You've been with Tommy now. You're in the 6th year. Maybe talk about this relationship and how it started, where he was ranking-wise, and we know where he is now. He's doing big things. So kind of talk about how this relationship began.
Yeah, it was a little bit of good luck on my part, I think. You know, hopefully on Tommy's also. But you know, in 2019, I was working with Kevin Anderson. We were at the U.S. Open. Kevin had an injury and actually needed surgery on his knee, withdrew from the tournament. And Tommy was there, and he was playing qualifying. That was the year it was a little bit controversial. He didn't get a wild card from the USTA for the main draw, so he was playing qualifying. He lost second round of qualifying there. And I just happened to, you know, he posted something on his social media, and I just messaged and said bad luck and started a little bit of a conversation. And came back the next day and asked me if I would travel in the fall with him because he knew Kevin wasn't going to be playing. And so I did the fall. He went and won the first challenger that he played. He was ranked about 125 to 130 at the time, and won the first challenger that we were collaborating together with, and then semis in Cary, North Carolina, and then won Tiburon and made top 100. First time he'd made top 100. And so at the end of the season, you know, they approached me and asked me if I would consider working with them on a more full-time basis. So, and that was a big decision because I was still actually involved with him working with Kevin, but made the decision to make a switch. Kevin was having problems physically. I wasn't sure he was going to be able to stay healthy for the entirety of the next year and stuff. So made the decision to go with Tommy, and it's been a really fortuitous, enjoyable. He's honestly Tommy's just such a genuinely nice person, and he's been great to work with. I've found him to be incredibly coachable right from day one. Been very open to things that we've done, and so it's been really good. And you know, Tommy play naked. That's always.
I was going to say, how open is he?
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, he's made such amazing strides with you. And what do you think has been the key factor in that development to continue to make the strides year in and year out?
Yeah, I think that, you know, I've tried. When we started, I gave Tommy a 5-year plan, actually. And the 5-year plan was based on, you know, ranking positions at the end of each year, hopefully progressions in, you know, winning a title, winning a 250, winning more, getting to the next level each time. And we've tried in every single season and every single year to look at things that we can continue to develop within his game. And the ultimate goal has been to make Tommy a complete all-around player. You know, I mean, our vision for him really is to be an aggressive, all-court attacking tennis player. Mm-hmm. And I think he's a fun guy to watch because of that. And I think he's done a great job of implementing all of those things.
Brad, you've worked with so many of the top players, starting all the way back when Courier was winning majors and you were working with him. But there have been times where you went back to Fresno, where you're from, and that's where Ethan Quinn was from. And I'm curious how you started with Ethan, how much time you worked with him, and how you married the two of working with Ethan, who's so young now, and Tommy, who is at the peak of his powers.
Yeah, that was. I started a little academy in Fresno for a period of time. I was off the tour, maybe a little disillusioned with working with some of the guys, and so I started this little academy in Fresno. And Ethan was one of the kids in the academy. And it's I'll tell you a great story about Ethan. He's literally, this is not a joke, he's literally taken 2 private lessons in his entire life.
No way.
And everything else that he's done was in the academy and in other group sessions. He took 1 private lesson from me. They said it was probably too expensive. and then he took 1 private lesson from the guy who was the head pro at our club. And other than that, he did everything through the academy. And so he came. He started there when he was about 6. And we had quite a few good players, guys that went on to play D1 collegiate tennis, a couple of very good guys that played D1, 1 or 2 guys that turned pro. And then you know, and he just kept progressing. And honestly, Ethan was just a gym rat. He just loved being at the courts. We had the older guys. We had what we called our elite training group. And those guys would train in the morning. And if Ethan had days where he didn't have school or other stuff like that, he would, you know, come and watch those guys train, hit with them as much as he possibly could, be around them as much as he possibly could. And then later on, when I went back, I went to the USTA actually for a while, and then back on tour, and I was out of town more. Whenever I would come home, Ethan and I would hit balls, and we would train, and I would give him stuff to work on, and I would basically tell him, like, look, I want this stuff to all be better when I come back next time. Whatever it is, 2-3 weeks or a month when I get back, this stuff should be better. And 99.9% of the time, everything that I had asked him to do, and we communicated obviously by text and messaging and stuff like that, but he would always get better. You got to give Ethan a massive amount of credit. In a lot of ways, he did a lot of self-coaching. You know, it was my input, but then he kind of, you know, filtered it and worked on it within his own way. And we had guys, really good guys at our club, teaching pros and stuff that were at the club that were very supportive and, you know, would give me updates or tell me things or give Ethan a little bit of input. And then he would ask me, hey, you know, Mike said this. What do you think? You know, how's this look? And he'll send me a video or something of what was going on. So. Yeah, I mean, he's an impressive kid. You know, he's obviously got a very big game, serving big now. His forehand's very big, and he's had really good progress now since the end of last year. He went through a hard period last year where he didn't win a lot of matches for about 4.5, 5 months. And I give him and Brian Garber, who travels with him, because Brian was there day to day. I'm dealing with it also, but I'm doing much more of it by text or by phone. Brian had to be there every day, you know, dealing with the losses. And there was a period of time where he just went through a section where he wasn't winning a lot of matches. And then had a big breakthrough last year in Champaign, won the Challenger in Champaign, made finals of the Challenger in Canberra in January, and then qualified in Dallas, won a round, qualified in Delray Beach, won a round. I think he was in as a lucky loser actually in Delray Beach, but won a round, and then qualified in Indian Wells, qualified here. I think, you know, qualifying back to back at Masters 1000s, that makes a little bit of a statement in and of itself. He also had the best win of his career here, beat a guy that was ranked 65 in the world last round of qualies. So. Tracy, ask me another question. I'll talk for like another 10 or 15 minutes.
It's my turn. I mean, I'm exhausted.
Jimmy can't wait to get a question in, and Nick's the same way. I'm the only person you guys have on that talks more than Nick.
Jimmy's ready.
Thanks for joining us. See you later.
We got the
What I was going to ask you, because I just saw this graphic that we have, and I hope you can see it too, and it shows some of the people you've coached, and it seems they've all been in the top 10. Were they all? Did you bring them all there for the first time? And if so, what do you do that allows you to have that kind of success?
What's the magic?
Yeah, what's the magic?
Just think if I'd known you when you were 14.
I needed
Jimmy.
some help,
when you were at the peak of your strength and career.
That was big there.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Wait,
Jimmy
who
was
is that guy with Courier?
Yeah, that's actually me. It's hard to imagine.
Is that you?
Yeah, that's actually at the club
it has to be, otherwise we wouldn't show it.
Tucked in.
Yeah, but if you go through those guys, when I started with Jim was 28 in the world, you know, and obviously I was also working. I was very lucky that I was working with Jose Higueras at that time when I was working with Jim. So that was a little bit of my development as a coach. He mentored me really, kind of what I feel like I'm doing with Brian now with Ethan. Andre Medvedev was top 10 when I started with him. Okay. We started, he was number 4. He dropped to number 11. He fired me.
Okay.
Marty, I started with when he was about 365-ish. And I got him just outside the top 100. And then the USTA came in and they gave him a free coach. And I was gone for that one for a while. And then Taylor was never top 10, so that one doesn't count, Jimmy.
Did he get?
He did have,
close.
and I've had this discussion with his Jimmy. You know very well his agent. Oliver Van Lindonk, you know, has told me that he believes that the best year of Taylor's career was the year that we spent together.
Okay, very good.
There we go.
Sebastian was coming back from an injury when I started with him. He was outside the top 10, and unfortunately we didn't get him back into the top 10. We did have some really good results. quarterfinal at the Australian and a semifinal at Wimbledon. Kevin was outside the top 10 when I started with him and got him up to 5. I think he's now the highest ranked player in the history of South Africa, I think. And yeah, finals of Wimbledon with me. He made the finals of Wimbledon. I mean, finals of the U.S. Open with his previous coach. And then this last guy, 2020 to current. I appreciate that. I'm still kicking right now.
Well, what's cool about with Tommy to me is that he was knocking on the top 10 door. It seemed like forever, and I think he would have gotten there earlier.
Or top
10. Top 10 for like 2 or 3 years.
Where was he ranked when you started?
Well, far away from that.
130-ish.
Yeah, I mean, he was trying to break into the top 100 when you started.
But I think he would have made top 10 last year, maybe even here in Miami. He lost to Martin Dahm because he had to pull out with an injury. He hurt his ankle and then missed a bunch of the year. But to me, Tommy last year was a top 5 or 6 player in the world. He was only losing to the best player. So I know it's been a long time for you to get him here to finally get to the top 10. Talk a little bit about what you think for him. You said you set goals every year. Now that he's already so high, where are the goals going to be?
Well, I mean, you know, it's easy, I think, in tennis to get caught up in the rankings. You know, you set ranking goals. We do that a little bit. I mean, I think we both have ideas in our heads of where we want to be. But more than that, Jimmy, I think that we try to focus on, you know, playing the best tennis that Tommy can play week in and week out, and trying to win titles. Like, you want to go at this point in Tommy's career where he is, you know, we feel like every single week he should be, you know, vying for a title if it's possible. And so I think if you're doing that and you're going deep in the tournaments, you're making quarters, semis, finals, or winning the tournaments. He won 3 titles last year. You know, that's taking care of the ranking on its own. And so we try to not necessarily talk specifically about numbers. It's obviously in your head. We know it. But, you know, I think is this some of the lowlights from last week in Indian Wells against
against
Daniel? Because if he plays like that, we're not staying even close to the top 10.
What happened in that match, though? Seriously, because I was watching that behind. What happened?
You know what, Tracy?
Against Medvedev.
Yeah, you know what? It was a bit of an anomaly. Tommy and I, I'll give you a little bit of the inside scoop. You know, it was a tough day. Rained all day, on and off. It was cold. It was windy. We knew that Tommy going on to play Daniel under those conditions wasn't an advantage for him by any means. I think he felt a little bit, you know, like I'm getting the short end of the stick here, a little bit, having to play at this time, blah, blah, blah.
What was it, late afternoon, early evening, right?
No, we started at 10 o'clock in the evening.
Oh, wow.
So,
10 o'clock.
So it was freezing cold. I had on 4 layers of clothes.
So it's going to be slower, so
it's
better for Medvedev. It's going to be
way slower, definitely an advantage for Daniel. And Tommy said after the match, it was funny, he came off, myself and his physio came through the back door, and he was coming in the other direction, and we shook hands, said bad luck. He walked straight into the locker room, changed his clothes real quick, got his stuff, and he came out and he said, guys, I'm going. He said, I'll talk to you guys. I just don't want to. And then literally 5 minutes later, which is probably bad because it means he was texting and driving. Maybe he was using the voice text. But
I'm sure he was.
We'll give him a benefit of the doubt.
I'm sure he was using the voice text for sure. But we got a message from him to the whole team. It wasn't just me and Seba who were there. It was also to Franco and to Hugo Armando, who's part of our team that were in Florida. And he apologized. He apologized, and he said, guys, I was bad. I had a victim's mentality out there. I didn't compete. It's not me. It's not who we are as a team. And I feel really bad, and I want to apologize to all you guys, and it won't happen again. And so, you know, that message meant a lot. That's the kind of person I think Tommy is. But I also think that match is going to really motivate him. And I talked to him the next day, Tracy, because I was asking him, you know, did you feel a lot of extra pressure from defending? He had semis from the year before, from trying to stay into the top 10. He has fallen out of the top 10 now. I think he's 13 this week. So I was asking him, do you feel pressure from the guys that are coming from behind you, you know, that you're not going to be able to stay in the top 10 or get back in the top 10? And he said, no, none of that. I don't feel any of that. And that's typical of Tommy. He generally is pretty good about that stuff, but he said 100% it was just an anomaly. It's just a freaky match, and for whatever reason I was in a bad headspace for the match, and it just didn't translate to playing good tennis, and he got his butt kicked.
And how important is that mental approach in teaching Tommy day in and day out, that mental approach? Is that something you all focus on?
100%, Nick. And I think that's, it's one of the things that I would say that, I think Tommy and me and all the guys on our team that we take the most pride in is that I like to think that Tommy's become recognized as being one of the, toughest competitors on the tour. We have a lot of great competitors out here, but I think Tommy he matches up right there competitively with just about anybody that's playing on the tour right now. And so I think that's why the message came from him, that he was embarrassed. He was embarrassed for the way that he represented himself and represented our team on that day. And as I said, for him to send that message and to send it so quickly right after the match, tells you something about his character and what kind of a person he is.
I'm going to courtesy Jim Courier on this next question, because whenever he chats about you, he mentions that your calling card is telling hard truths to the players. He mentioned that was huge and instrumental for his rise up. But it's also important to know that in this tennis coaching world, your client is the one that's doing the hiring, the firing, and paying your salary. So have you had to give Tommy any hard truths? And how do you kind of walk that balance of being that guy, but then also knowing that, that this client is kind of the boss in a way? It's very strange in tennis.
Yeah, it's a unique situation in tennis, and I think it creates a lot of yes people. That you're more worried about making sure that you hold on to your job than you are necessarily about telling people what they might need to hear. I like to think that I've never been like that. I've always said that if I'm afraid of losing my job, then I'm probably not doing my job the way I'm supposed to. So I think that, and that doesn't mean that the message has to be delivered, like screaming and yelling at someone or anything like that. I learned a long time ago in coaching that you can get your point across in a normal tone of voice. You can be stern, you can be direct without having to raise your voice and scream and yell. Tommy and we haven't had too many of those moments. We've had one really big one 3 years ago, I believe. We were actually in Sertogenbosch, and Tommy had played the week before and lost a match to Grigspor that he didn't compete particularly well in, and then the following week in Sertogenbosch, he was similar, and he was a little bit disrespectful on the court of his opponent, mocking him a little bit in a way, and I pulled him aside after the match, and we had a sit down, and the bottom line was basically I said to him after, this is a long conversation, I said to him, that he had embarrassed me the last 2 weeks in a row. I'd felt embarrassed to be connected with him and what was going on the court. Lack of effort the week before, the mocking of his opponent that week, and those kind of things. And I told him that if he continued to embarrass me, that I wouldn't be there with him anymore, that I would go home and wouldn't be interested in traveling with him. And that was after a lot of other stuff. And it's the same thing. I went a long time ago to hear the former Warriors coach speak. I'm blanking on
Mark
his name
Jackson?
now.
Don Nelson.
No, before that, Don Nelson. We're going way back.
Nice, Jimmy.
Don
10
Nelson
points for
speaking.
Jimmy.
Yeah, you go, Jimmy.
Jimmy, well, that's 'cause
Jimmy's older.
that's my age.
Yeah, Jimmy's also older. So, but he said something that always stuck in my head, and I think it's so true. He said that at some point or another in the relationship between a coach and a player, there comes a point where the coach pushes, and how the player reacts to that pushing determines what direction their relationship goes in. And so with Tommy, and if I look back with Jim especially, whenever I pushed, and sometimes you're pushing gently, but you're pushing.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're pushing more aggressively. But those guys have always responded to that pushing in a way that made them better players. And in that conversation in Sertogenbosch with Tommy, after I spoke, as you guys can see, for a solid 30 or 40 minutes, just basically laying into him. I was laying into him about everything. And he basically said at the end, he said to me, I can't argue with anything you've said. And that was a point where he said, same thing, he said, I'm going to do better. I've got to do better. And I think that was a big moment for him, you know.
And was this about around the same time as well? You know, we talk about his fitness trainer, Franco Herrero, and how important fitness has become with Tommy. When did he make that switch in his head that, oh, wait, I also need to start focusing on my fitness as well, because now he's an absolute beast on the court?
Yeah, no, I can point to a specific time for that, Nick, also. That was the first, you know, when Tommy and I went to the Australian Open in 2020 before COVID had hit. And it was funny because that was the first time that we had been to a slam together. And I remember saying to him, you know, or asking him, you know, in a conversation I think that Franco was on also, and I asked him, you know, how good a shape he thought he was in, and he said he thought he was in pretty dang good shape. And I said, well, whatever shape you think you're in, you need to be in twice as good a shape, because he hadn't really played any 3 out of 5 set tennis at that time. And I said, you know, no matter what you think it is, it's going to be harder. And so then we went to Australia, and he won his first Grand Slam.
I remember this.
Grand Slam first round match. He beat a guy from South America. He was supposed to play on Monday, got rained out, moved to Tuesday, won in 4 sets, and then he had to play again the next day against Grigor, and ended up beating Grigor in 5 sets. And the next day he could barely walk. I mean, he was, you know, we hit for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, just to hit a couple balls, and the rest of the day was dedicated completely to trying to recover. And he went out in the 3rd round and he played Martin Fucsovics, and he got his tail handed to him, because the first 2 sets he said, I was so scared that I was going to cramp that I wasn't really playing. And so after that match, you know, as we were walking back in, I asked him, I said, do you think, you know, the big name guys, you know, Rafa, Roger, Novak, any of those guys, do you think they go through that match and they win that match? It's the same exact scenario. If they played on Tuesday 4 sets, 5 sets on Wednesday, and they had to play, you know, again on Friday, do you think they get through the match? And he said, yeah, I think so. And I was like, Tommy, you're 100% right, because they've been there. They know what it takes. They're in actually better shape than you realize. And you have to push yourself to that. And that's the moment where from that time on, he allowed Franco to push him a lot harder. And since then, we've really never had any issues, you know, with the matches in 3 out of 5s.
And that's given him extra confidence, right? Going
100%.
later into matches. And does he feel that? Does he talk about that?
I just think that he, you know, it's not something that we necessarily have talked about. Sometimes he gets a little cocky, you know, with Tommy likes to take his shirt off while he's practicing and stuff, you know, looking a little bit ripped and stuff, you know. People start making comments. It's like, you know, it builds your ego. You know that.
Come on now.
Nick's got a few muscles on him here and there. So yeah, it definitely helps him out, you know, and he's done a really good job, I think, year in and year out. And I use that term on purpose of really allowing Franco to push him. He really does. He allows Franco to push him as hard as Franco can push him.
Brad, we sometimes like to ask players how they recover after a long match. You might need the ice bath after this interview. I don't know what you're going to recover after this one.
Brad's always ready for anything. He's always ready. Brad, looking ahead, kind of future goals. You know, what are you guys talking about for Tommy Paul over the next year or two? You know, because as Jimmy had said, I mean, he's been now inside the top 10. He's creeping there. He wants to keep going. What are your goals for the next year or two?
I mean, it's
because you always talk about this is the Tommy 5.0, 6.0.
Yeah,
every year is a 1.0, 2.0.
We are in Tommy 6.0 right now,
and what's 6.0?
Jimmy, obviously, for where we're at right now, you know, the goal is to try and win a major. You know, can we do it? I don't know. You know, it takes a little bit of luck. It takes a little bit of things falling in the right place. I mean, he's been in a semi, but he wasn't necessarily close. Played Novak in Australia, and Novak beat him pretty solidly. I mean, this year he's in the quarters, and honestly, you know, he served for the first set, served for the second set against Sasha. I felt like he had a great chance to really win that match, and then if he wins that match and Novak pulls out in the semis, he's in a final, and at that point, you're like, who knows what happens? You know, does he have an advantage? Is he the favorite going into a match like that? No, obviously not. You know, Tommy, I think, is, I mean, he's an absolutely great player. Is he right there with the very, very top guys? It's been close. He's beaten every single one of them, but you know, is he there day in and day out? And that's what we have to get to try and make that happen. You know, but I think, like anyone that's playing as well as he is, you know, I think Fritz is in the same boat. I think there's a bunch of guys now in the scenario that we're in with Rafa and Roger gone and Novak, you know, we're kind of not sure exactly where he is sometimes in the slams, especially playing 3 out of 5. the door's open for a lot more guys, obviously. So it's a matter of, grabbing the bull by the horns when you have the opportunity and knocking down the door.
Yeah, what is that minutia? Because now we're just talking about a few points here and there. I mean, you're boiling it down. So is it playing bigger in the big moments? Is it playing bigger overall, just a little bit more firepower? What is it that Tommy's looking for?
Tracy, I haven't said this to anybody really so far, so you guys will be the first one to hear it. But Tommy 6.0, we've had a consistent thing, but Tommy 6.0 is that, and it's something that I've actually spoken to Hugo, Armando, and Tommy about just in the last few days, that when I was pushing Tommy really hard to attack a lot more, there were periods that I went through where I was like, am I really doing the right thing? Is this how we should be playing? And Tommy 6.0 for me is a little bit the same way, but what we're really pushing Tommy hard to do is to try and play bigger on a more consistent basis, so bigger in general off the ground. If you look at his stats, his forehand last year, both the speed of the forehand and the rotation of the forehand increased significantly from the year before. So we're trying to, at a minimum, maintain that, if not push that even a little bit further. Same on the backhand side. So basically, Tommy 6.0 is bigger hitting and also trying to play more aggressive patterns in the court. And that, for me, is based on trying to get to the point where you're playing the absolute most elite guys in the world and then taking the bull by the horns to try and beat those guys. We felt like in the past when Tommy's been in those situations, in the biggest moments, he tries to bear down and not give anything away, but he doesn't necessarily look to try and win the points. And against those guys, they're playing a lot more first strike tennis and taking more risk in those moments, and that risk is paying off, I think, for them, and it has been. And so we're trying to push a little bit more towards that kind of a tactic and playing.
Brad, I think it's a common complaint in tennis that just people involved in the sport give PC answers and just don't give you much. I just want to say on behalf of the crew here and everyone at home, just thank you for all the insight and the story time, telling us those stories. Everything was really intriguing and really insightful. So thank you for the time. I know we asked you a lot. We put you through the ringer, but best of luck with you and Tommy.
Not at all. I'm happy to be here. Nick also told me that he'd pay me $1 a word.
I've already put that in your pocket, so you're all good. What does tomorrow look like? Tommy plays on Friday. Before we let you go, what does tomorrow look like for him?
Tomorrow we've been on the All-American practice week this week. We practiced with Giron yesterday. We practiced with Mickelson today, and we got Korda tomorrow.
Okay, nice.
And so yeah, the tournament's been very nice to us. We got 90 minutes the other day on the center court with Marcos. And today we were with Mickelson for 90 minutes on the practice courts, and I don't know where we are tomorrow, but we're with Sebi.
Oh, nice.
Dean Goldfein's helping him out, so I'm sure we'll be on a prime court somewhere.
Oh yeah, Dean will take care of it.
Yeah, exactly. So
actually, I got one quick question:
well,
is stadium court the same speed as the outside course? Because everyone's telling me the courts are really quick. Was stadium also quick? Because a lot of tournaments, it's a little different.
It was, Jimmy. It was quick. Every court we've hit on so far here, and everybody I've talked to, the courts are definitely playing quicker than they were last year, a lot quicker than Indian Wells, a lot. And I'll tell you this also, because I know it's a big topic of conversation with everyone. I think that the balls are performing a lot better because the court's not as gritty. So the balls are holding up and staying. They're not getting like this big, like they were in Indian Wells or some of the other events, because the courts are a little bit faster.
And also, congrats to Tommy on the runner-up for, what was it, the best-looking guy?
The best looking.
The hot man competition.
The hot
Tracy,
man
it was
competition.
Look at this girl on the right. Look at this girl on the right.
Ladies are just manhandling.
Was he pissed? Was he upset he got second?
It was fixed. Did you see the pictures that they used for Mateo?
Not fair.
I mean, he was an underwear model in those pictures. I mean, how's Tommy supposed to compete with that?
And he did get $15
he's number one in our
at
eyes.
the Olive Garden.
Tommy's number one in our eyes.
He did. No, I think that was Mateo's prize. Was the $15
$15 in a sash
at Olive Garden? Yeah, yeah. I think Tommy was okay with second place in that. I don't think he was that concerned.
Pretty good.
Solid
Awesome.
finish. Best
Well,
of
thanks,
luck
Brad.
with the squad
Thanks,
against
Brad.
Bublik.
Awesome.
We love you, Brad.
Good luck.
All right, you guys.
See ya.
You're the man.